Looking at power seat functions, we've kind of labelled this as standard power seat functions because I think these are probably the things that most of you are seeing out there. So looking at power tilt, useful for providing stability. It can help with head position, particularly if you've got weak neck muscles. Can supposedly decrease the effects of scoliosis. Now gravity, we're talking about here, you're eliminating gravity. I say supposedly because it only works if someone's going to use it. It's great in theory, but if you've got someone that actually isn't tilting that far back or isn't tilting at all, then there's no point saying that it's going to help with scoliosis. Definitely useful when you're going down ramps, outdoors. Also clearing foot plates, getting caster clearance and out on curbs. One of the cons is it does increase your overall length. So if you've got someone that's driving in a certain degree of tilt, particularly inside, make sure that they do drive in that degree of tilt when you're assessing them in the chair, because that can impact on your turning circles, particularly getting indoors. And also if you've got people that hang backpacks on the back and other things sticking out the back, that increases your length quite a lot. So power elevating seats, useful for transfers because requires less lower leg strength. Also, if you're doing a sliding transfer, it can be a lot easier to go downhill. So if you can raise yourself above the surface and then go down. Useful for reach, again, assuming you've got the function in your hands to benefit from that reach. Power recline. Can be useful for dressing lower limbs, use of urinal bottles can help accommodating hips. It does change the position of where you are in relation to the back, and that's something Rachel's going to talk to a little bit later with alternative controls, and have a go. Put the chair in recline and see how it copes with driving in head array and see what the difference is like there. It can add additional depth to the chair, so on some chairs it can add up to 4 inches of depth. You can retrofit recline, but if you're going to be doing that later, you need to think about having the depth in the chair to do that. For some backrests, it can be quite difficult. Depending on your interface, it can be difficult to fit a backrest to a recline unit. And again, people that are usually using recline, Rachel's made the valid comment before, often people that are in lazy boys and they're doing that already, and they need that recline position for comfort, and then you're looking at a power chair, they're often the ones that you think actually, yes, they might need it. And we'll talk to a little bit later the use of recline with other features as well. Power elevating lower limb supports, useful for edema, and I'll show you a picture of the angles you need to be in for that. I had one lady who used them for ground clearance. She got quite dizzy with tilt, and there was only a minuscule amount of tilt she could tolerate, and she had quite a rough area around her immediate area to get in and out of the house, so she had to elevate her legs basically to clear the ground. They can be heavy, so if you've got separate swing-away ones, they are jolly hard to move, to be honest. I've found for some of the more active users, if you've got someone that's really active, the swing-away ones too, if they're real bullet-a-gate type people, they're not going to last long, to be honest. They can be quite fragile. Combining some of these features, the greatest reduction of pressure is seen when you've got tilt and recline together. So that's a Resner statement. They recommend 35 degrees of tilt and about 100 degrees of recline. This picture is one that Rach took yesterday, and this is a recommended position for someone that's got a significant pressure injury. So that's 30 degrees of tilt and 120 of recline. So that's quite a lot. Now edema, we talk a lot about power elevating leg rests for edema. Only useful if you're actually going to tilt the chair to 30 degrees. So that's what that looks like, which is quite a lot. And I don't know about you guys, but I see people just sitting in their chairs pushing a button and going, there you go, I'm solving this. But if you're not actually tilting your chair, you're not getting the results that you should actually be getting.
This has come from our team working through some requests for EMS advice and seeing some quite ambitious power chair setups, which for the right person and set up well can be brilliant, but if it's one of those things, if you get it wrong, can be awful. So this is the Rovi, which is outside, so we've got a centre mount footplate and power recline. It's a matrix deep back, which is actually recessed slightly into the back canes, which means you actually get a nice compact overall fit. So this is power tilt, power recline, power elevating legs. This compares to, and this is the quantum setup, and keep in mind we asked the suppliers to set up the chairs of this, so it's no bagging either chair because each setup can be done on the other. We've got the power swing away leg rest. You can see the extra depth that the swing away leg rest adds. The power recline here, it's a different setup, so it does take up more depth. Keeping in mind this photo on the right hand side, you'll just see half of it on the back is the attendant control. You can see the attendant control sits far back of the rear casters, which means if you're going through a doorway and you turn at the wrong time, you will smash that controller. And so it's piecing some of this stuff together. Another thing to consider is often the clients in these chairs end up with specs back or super shaped backs or custom backs, which can add 3, 4, 5 inches of depth, in which case you end up pushing the client further forward. The pivot point for your recline is at the bottom of the recline unit. If they're sitting 4 inches ahead of that, and particularly for some of our chairs, they've also got the false canes on, that your recline's going to be a little bit strange because of where everything's mounted. But you also need to keep in mind that if you're pushing the person further forward in the chair, that you're not going to front load the casters, because out and about in the community, getting up lips and things is going to be awful. So by all means, have a chat to the suppliers and say, all right, this is what I need, these are the dimensions I've got to work within, how can I set this up? So, and the likes of swing away elevating leg rests are great, particularly if people have got two very different legs. So power legs, they're both up or they're both down and they both go to the same sort of angle. The swing aways give you more flexibility in what you can do with them, but it's keeping in mind that you need a careful user, because if you clip a doorway with these, you will smash them. So, and in our stores we do have units floating around that get put on thinking, yes, they're great. Person just goes, actually I can't manage them, I can't get through my door, or I've broken them, so they end up back with us. So there's two TAs with recline and elevating legs. Their units are different again, so by all means have a look and have a compare. For each unit there's pros and cons of how each works. It's quite funny, this photo actually doesn't look flat, but when you do this in the chair, it's fairly flat. It's actually quite a comfortable position. So this sort of thing we would fund for people with very high or very complex positioning needs, and it might be that it's a person who needs to remain in their chair all day, so it might be someone who's at work, who they work a full day, but in the middle of that day they actually need a rest for comfort, or full stretch, or it's someone who's at home all day on their own with some very high needs. So typically you've got very high tone, it might be pain issues, in which case we do fund them under these situations, and when they're well set up can be a very good option for some.
And I do have some people that sleep in their chairs the odd night, and we know it's not ideal, but people are going to do it. One of the ladies I work with, she does it when her husband's away hunting and he's away overnight, and her argument is, I don't want to be stuck in the bed at night and I can't get out if there's a fire. But if I sleep in my chair one night every couple of months, I feel safe. And yeah, that makes sense. She's got those features for other reasons, but she also uses it to sleep.
We've had one solution come that she came from Seating to Go area where Elevate was used as well, which caught this whole solution up. For someone who hoisting in and out of bed was actually not an easy manoeuvre, was very painful for the person. So what they could do is, using a back that had swing away laterals, they could bring the chair alongside the bed, they could slide them over into the chair and then bring them up into sitting. So, which is a very out of the box solution, but in saying that, we've got some very out of the box clients out there. So multiple power functions, and this is in relation to when we will fund them. Looking at our ICF stuff, we're in the body structures and function category. We've got people that have some very challenging needs. So often, like I said, very high tone, pain issues to whatever, so it might be joints that are no longer functioning well, particularly hips. And all other conventional strategies have failed. So it's things like you've tried your manual options, it's whether or not getting out of the chair for a period of days is a possibility. No, that's not practical for this reason. Potentially for people who transfers are a challenge. So I mean, there was the case before of the person that actually hoisting wasn't easy, but for some people who they independently transfer, How the functions are set up means they can do it independently. And one I'll come back to is about the use of anterior tilt, which is becoming a more viable option now, but it might be that with some pre-recline that you can get recline come forward, some elevating seat and the power foot plates as well, that you can have someone who can transfer independently, which at work means they can go to the toilet on their own, or if they're home alone they can do some more. So we have some people with some very challenging needs who live home alone. So they have their set carer times that they come in, they might be morning and night, and in between that time they need to manage. So, and again, sometimes these power functions mean that they do manage at home living alone. Failing to meet those complex needs that they've got means that it will need to go into care, so in which case the cost-effective option is to provide the chair.
I wonder if it's just worth mentioning too that so these high-end chairs with all the bells and whistles, you're often getting up into that Ministry of Health amount that we have to go to the Ministry for approval. So that's when we're looking for a little bit more information to put in those Ministry reports.
So you'll know when it goes to the Ministry, A, because we'll tell you, but B, we're often after a lot more information. And again, it's coming back to those goal settings and what are we trying to do and what are the other options and why are they not viable. So, and this is the level of information the Ministry expect, and often it's a case of we need all the information to make the call. So the thing to keep in mind with multiple power functions, the more that you put on a chair, the more that there is to go wrong. And so you need a client or a carer who's cognitively able to manage all the functions that you put on the chair, and it's things like actually the controller alone and navigating all these functions can be challenging, and there is ways that we can make this easier. So if it's absolutely essential, then yes. But like I said, if you've got functions on there that the person's struggling to manage, and sometimes the one that I've had recently is the lockout angles with the recline and tilt, and the person actually couldn't navigate why the chair wasn't driving, and she's struggling to get through the functions, and in the end result, the chair wouldn't drive. Turned out it was one of the recline lockout settings, and that we took the recline off the chair and she managed independently. For some people, simply less is more, and that you actually start looking back at these other options, and it might be that you are getting carers to come in the middle of the day so they can have a rest on their bed, because actually that's the better way of managing. And as you can see before with the angle you need to manage edema, I suspect a lazy boy chair is more comfortable for these people because it's quite a spooky angle to sit on to get the effective relief. So yes, we can do all this fantastic stuff, but it does come at a price, and particularly if you've got some very heavy users or those who are struggling to manage the functions, that sometimes it's better to strip it right back and have another solution. In terms of fallout style chairs, if this is the case and you identify at the start that this is what the person needs, but we cannot put it all in a power chair, can we please have the basic power chair and the fallout chair as well, then we will consider that in terms of what actually works for the environment they're in and the needs that they've got. In terms of making life easier, there is programming options. It was interesting chatting to all the suppliers yesterday, and because each chair's got different electronics, so we've got RNet, QLogic and Mark 6, and each can do different things. And I think the main part here is to have a chat to the suppliers about how can I make this easier. Some of the chairs have got smart actuators, so at the moment it's the TDX chairs and the Permobil chairs have got it. That's as of now. I suspect that's going to change in the future to come. And it allows for programming of preset angles. So if you've got someone with a nasty pressure area or coming off bed rest and getting back into a chair, and you know that this is the angle they need to be into pressure relief, you can program that. How that's programmed on different chairs is different depending on whether you've got actuators or you're using some of your other programming features. You can just lock out angles for some functions. So whether or not this is the amount of tilt I would like you to use, and you program that the chair stops when you get to that amount of tilt, and they just know I keep going until it stops and that's the angle I have to be in. There's no guesswork. Using tilt and recline, those lockout angles get tricky, but you just got to get creative around that. And like I said, discuss with your local techs and discuss with your suppliers, I do need this function, or I do need the person to be able to do this in the chair. How can I do it so that it's achievable? Versus we put the functions on, the client has no idea what it all means or how to do it, and it never gets used, in which case you don't get the result that you like. There is some software understanding coming out around you can actually see what clients are actually doing in their chairs, so they can tell you, yeah, I'm doing this. Do a bit of monitoring, no, you're not. But then your question, is it compliance, or have we set it up in a way that doesn't work for the client? Yeah. Some of our less common power seat functions and some cool stuff out there. The vertical lift foot plate, there's currently 2 versions out on the market. What I've used them for is people who struggle with foot plates, so they can't do the flip up, they can't do the swing away because they can't lift their feet up and get their hands out, but they need to be able to transfer in and out of their chair independently. So you can have a foot plate that will go to the floor. How you do this depends on which chair you're in. So the TA is what's a nice feature is if you're convenient, your lower leg length happens to be the chair at the lowest height, you can set it that you push everything down and then when you're on the down to the floor, you stand on the foot plate and you hop out. The downside obviously is the person needs to remember to lift their chair before they drive away. There's also an option that the foot plate will move up and down, so you can push the foot plate to the floor. Again, the person can stand on it and transfer out. Again, a minority thing, but for some people when their tone and their function and their balance, they can transfer if the conditions are right, but it can be challenging otherwise with foot plates. And typically this need comes around toileting, and the couple of ladies I've had have been Emmys. When they need to go, they need to go. Yeah, so they haven't got time to faff around with foot plates to get out of the chair. So the TA IQ, one of them's got the vertical foot plate on it today. The power flip up foot plate is just a nifty feature that if a person can get their legs out of the way, and the foot plate will flip up themselves. It's not one we've used an awful lot, but you can use the old client and you think, that might work.
And assuming you've tried the pull up cord.
Yeah, so I mean, this is assuming other options have been excluded, but it's always nice to know some of the new stuff out there. A para anterior tilt. Now there's a couple of options on the market. So there's a Motion Concepts version which will give you 30 degrees of anterior tilt. The challenges with it is you need to be careful when you're stacking up your power functions because it's almost effectively you're stacking your functions up, in which case you can get a lot of movement in the seat, which some people don't like. But for some people, if you've just got tilt and anterior tilt for transferring out of a chair, then that can work really well. So we're talking people who, if they're brought into anterior tilt, they can get onto their feet. So often a lot of your dystrophy type people, and you're less common.
People with fixed hip flexion, I've used it for. People that stand with their legs fully extended. People that need to toilet themselves.
The one thing to watch with it is the likes of elevating seat, you come up, and the beauty of it is you can shimmy forward on your feet and drop down, or shimmy forward on your seat and drop down onto your feet. The anterior tilt, you do mean to be fine, it will bring you up, but you actually do need some quad strength so that you don't slither off the seat. So you need to be able to brace yourself and get that last little bit of extension. For those who've got that, it's actually quite a useful feature.
And I've got one lady that can independently toilet with the toileting device because she uses 30 degrees of anterior tilt, and that's huge for her.
The Permobil chairs offer 30 and 45, and 45 degrees you can see a lot, and it actually also benefits for functional reach. So for those in Elevate, because to work in Elevate you've got your chair here, which case you often need to rotate and you need reasonable trunk control, you need to be able to move outside your base of support. 45 degrees might be that difference of being able to access things out of a cupboard, off the bench. So 45 degrees of tilt is only achievable on F5, and to do this you also need the power. They've got a sort of a vertical lift foot plate, in which case you have knee blocks, and depending on whether you're transferring out or you're staying in there, it is an over 25 option, so it does go to the Ministry of Health. We've done a couple, but
we've done a couple too. And the other thing with the anterior tilt is with the Permobil it goes in brackets of funding, so 10 degrees is cheaper than 20 degrees than 30 degrees. So it's about, how much angle do you actually need.
Yeah, so it's again something else that you put at the back of your mind, and you might meet the person going, actually that's a neat idea. For all of the chairs you can get 5 degrees of anterior tilt out of the units. You can increase that again if you wedge your cushion. The thing you need to keep in mind is if you're wedging your cushion, to come back to level you're going to have to use some posterior tilt to bring you back, which will lift your seat to floor height because you're effectively tilting back. That makes sense. But for some people who say are working in an office, or they like that functional position of being slightly forward for functional use, and I know for kids it's something we talk about a lot, that actually having your knees slightly lower than your hips, you get some lovely extension and good hand function. But for some people who are working at a computer, it could be a nice feature as well. So, and that can be done on the existing units. So sometimes that's a little bit is all you need.
And I think because we can now do it, like I've got one lady that now uses anterior tilt for transfers as opposed to elevate. So I know we've used elevate a lot, but for some people, depending on where their legs actually sit when you're positioned in space, anterior tilt can work.